Quilty is brought to you by APQS, handcrafted quilting machines. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Hovel, when you need to cut it close, choose Hovels. Quiltology, the urban quilt space.
Quilty. Hello and welcome to Quilty. Today on the show, we ask the question, what is a quilt? My friend Susan Holton joins me to talk about what a quilt is, what it isn't, and why they were made in the first place. Join us. Welcome, Susan, to Quilty.
Thanks, Mary. Good to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you are here today, and I want to give you the opportunity to tell the people at home watching a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have two careers. I'm a graphic designer by trade, so I've worked for some major corporations, healthcare, all kinds of things like that.
Cool.
I still do that freelance. Luckily, I'm multifaceted, so I also quilt, and I've been embroidering and sewing since I was probably about 9.
Wow.
So I've been doing it for a long time.
And you teach quilting as well and sewing.
I
right?
do. I teach sewing. I teach quilting at Quiltology in Chicago.
Cool.
And I'm also an instructor at the Illinois Institute of Art in Chicago, where I teach knitwear design.
Not bad. She knows what she's talking about is sort of the point, I think. Definitely a fan of yours, Susan. I really love the quilts that you make. And I wanted to have you on today because I know that you have a lot of experience with beginner quilters. And I have met many beginner quilters myself and was once a beginner quilter. And a lot of the people that come into the shop at Quiltology or who ask me questions, I don't think that they know what a quilt is. They know they want to make something, they want to make a baby quilt for their friend or they want to do a project, but when it comes down to actually beginning, they get stumped because they don't know what a quilt actually is.
Right. Very true.
It's okay that they don't know because no one ever taught them.
Right.
A quilt is a bed cover made by stitching 3 layers together. The top layer is the patchwork or piecing layer. There's the batting, the cotton batting, the filler, which makes it warm, and then the backing fabric. I've made the sandwich. And so we have a pieced top here. It's just a little 9 patch, right? So I've pieced a top, which is the top layer. Then there's this batting. And what is batting made of?
It can be made of cotton, which that's what that looks like, 100% cotton, bleached or unbleached. It can be wool, which is even more warm. It's a little more lofty, but very light. Can be polyester, and it can be a combination. And now there's new battings made out of cotton bamboo blends.
Wow. Oh, so, cool. Eco-friendly.
Eco-friendly.
Eco-friendly. I like it. And then, of course, we have the back. And this is not pieced. If the blanket that you're looking at is a quilt, it will have these 3 different layers. But my mom and some of the people I was talking to, were like, it's not a quilt until it's quilted. And that is the key, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me about why this little sample is is a quilt. I mean, it's been quilted.
Right. It has been quilted. So it's the stitching that goes through all of the layers, which keeps the batting from shifting.
So this top layer, this patchwork layer, the piecing layer is really where the art of the quilt happens. So I would like to talk a little bit about that and show some of the different examples of patchwork that can be done because it's limitless.
It is.
Right? Can you tell me a little bit about patchwork and piecing?
Patchwork is usually done in a block, but not necessarily. But you usually end up with some sort of unit at the end. Like what you were originally showing over there would be a block that would go into a bigger quilt. So you have 9 pieces of fabric that go into a 9 patch, which becomes a block for many, many 9 patches that go into a quilt that all get sewn together.
Right. It's like a unit.
It is a unit.
A block is a unit of patchwork that is sort of complete, a complete unit.
It is. So you can go from the 9 patch and then you can start on a different kind of grid. This one, the center dark square, is sewn to the 2 outer squares. Those are then sewn to the top and bottom and on infinitum until you finish the block.
I love this block.
Isn't that great?
Here's another example of a patchwork block. This one is really just triangles and squares. In fact, it's all triangles.
It's all triangles. It's all triangles.
And you sew this triangle to that, that triangle to this, and then as you build your little pieces, you finally, get your block. So we have some more examples. This is a very cool
little snail's trail.
Snail's trail. These are yours. You did these. And this, it looks like there's a curl happening, but really it's just also triangles and squares.
Right. It is. It starts off with the squares, a little 4 patch. The triangles get sewn onto that. And people think, oh my goodness, I have to cut triangles. Triangles are just squares cut on the angle. So it's really, you don't have to think about, oh, I have to cut triangles. So,
right. It's very simple. The other technique that you would use if you're making quilt blocks and doing your top is applique. Can you tell me a little bit about applique?
Applique is yet another piece of fabric or pieces of fabric sewn on top of a one piece like this, or it can actually also be sewn on top of patchwork.
Right. So instead of piecing small pieces of fabric together to make a large piece of fabric, you're taking a base and stitching onto the top of that. Right, like this little flower here. This is this yellow piece of fabric with the little blue corners, and this flower has been stitched on top.
Right, and it can either be done by hand or done on machine.
Right. So here's another example of that. A little heart with those darling little owls. Yes. Very cute. Would be good for a baby
Owls are very
quilt.
big now.
They are big now. They're
big now.
very popular. They're having their moment, the owls. And this is an example of a pieced block with applique as well. So you can certainly combine them. And I brought this quilt block just because it's such a monster.
Oh my goodness.
This is a very advanced quilt block. I mean, this is a set-in kind of thing. It's not for the beginner maybe, but it's
something to aspire to.
Something to aspire to. Yes. So, Susan, that was great. I'd just like to go over some review for the people watching.
Okay.
A quilt is a bed cover, or it could be a wall hanging too, that is a sandwich stitched together. 3 layers, the top, the batting, and the backing. Patchwork. You want to take that one?
Sure. Patchwork can either be done in a grid like your original piece, the 9-patch. There's thousands of blocks that you can put together. And patchwork is the art of the top.
Exactly. Tell us a little bit about applique, what applique is.
Applique can be done on patchwork. So for instance, like this one. So we did patchwork here. And applique is fabric that's sewn on top of that, either by hand or by machine.
Right. Batting. Batting is the cotton filler. It can be cotton. It's the warm part of the quilt, the middle layer. It can be cotton. It can be polyester. It can be a blend of those things. And what else did we talk about today? Let's see. Patchwork, applique, the quilt, the batting. I think that's it.
I think we covered it all.
Thanks, Susan, for joining us on Quilty.
No problem. Always welcome.
Quilty is brought to you by APQS, handcrafted quilting machines. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Hovel, when you need to cut it close, choose Hovels. Quiltology, the urban quilt space.